Many photographers believe that to make professional portrait, we have to use flash. But can we do it with natural light? The answer is absolutely yes. But if we already have flash, why we even bother to use natural light? Well, here's the thing. Natural light has some unique character that's really hard to replicate using flash. And sometimes the natural light is just so perfect, any extra flash will only ruin your photo. This is the reason why I believe every single portrait photographer should learn how to use natural light. Then what is the key thing to work with natural light then? Well, we need to know how to find a good natural light. So in this video, I'm going to show you 7 tips that are going to help you to find the perfect natural light, which you can get amazing result. After this video, you might be surprised that those perfect lighting moments happen a lot more often than you thought. The first one is direct sunlight. Direct sunlight is probably the most hated light by portrait photographers because the light is so harsh. You usually got very harsh shadows, especially under the eye. Many people avoid direct sunlight. But direct sunlight has a very unique look. Actually, if you be smart with it, you can get some really good result. I actually found out about this through an accident. So that's a few years ago. I was doing a photo shoot as normal. I packed my flash, my softbox, trigger, camera, everything. And when I got to the location, I realized I missed something very important, which is the light stand. So without light stand and without assistant, there's no way I can use my flash. So my only choice is shooting with a natural light. And as usual, I normally start with a backlighting position, but at that lighting condition, without help with the flash, that's absolutely not possible because the shadow is just too dark. So I have to try to use the natural light, use the sunlight as the key light. And then I get my model to turn to the sun. I start composing the shot, everything. And then when I look through the viewfinder, like what I see is like, I was absolutely blown away. It was like really good result and there's just straight out of the camera. Actually, this happened before I even clicked the camera because you can just see on the viewfinder. Later on, I just think about it. I think, okay, I need to understand why this works because otherwise I cannot replicate my magic. At the end, I think there are 2 things that make this shot work, make this particular lighting condition perfect. The first is because the fact that the light is coming from the side and at the lower angle. So there's not like when the sun's above your subject, then usually there's a dark shadow around the eye area. So the light's coming from the side, so they kill those dark shadow around the eye. That makes the lighting on the model's face a lot better. The second thing is she's facing away from the camera, is looking directly at the sun. So the transition between the light and shadow actually happening around the cheek other than on the eyebrow. So this makes the transition appear a lot more smoother. These 2 things combined together make the lighting on model's face look a lot better. And I tried the same technique again later on using different photo shoot, and then the result is pretty consistent. After that, I believe I can get decent result using direct sunlight. I just need to be a little bit strategic in terms of the angle and everything. So that's the first benefit. The lighting on the subject can look good. The second thing is this shot, because the sun is the only light source, the sun is responsible for the light on both the subject and the background. So as long as I make one of them the exposure perfect, everything else will be perfect. And you can see on the shot, from the foreground, the grass, the log, to the mountain, to the cloud, everything just look very natural. And then there's nothing like fighting with each other. Like normally that's the case when we shoot backlighting. You usually have to find this balancing point between the subject and the background because the background is usually too bright and your subject is usually too dark. You have to use a flash and then you have to make sure you use a reasonable amount of the flash and then also maintain the form, everything. Well, if you want to know more, you should try to take a look at the other videos I post on my channels talking about the using flash for portrait lighting, for outdoor lighting. Yeah, but in this case, everything just works very naturally together. And I found this particular setup using this type of lighting works really well if you like to do those environment portrait, like both the subject and the background are important. This will just give you a really good result. Okay, that's talking about using the sunlight as the key light, direct sunlight as a key light. But can we use the sunlight as a kicker light like we normally do when we're using a flash and without using a flash? The answer is yes. Well, we're gonna need some help. The first way to help that is we're gonna use some way to bounce the light back to our subject. This is very easy to do when you're shooting a location like a city environment. So this particular shot is like, I got the model stand very close to the wall, and then the sun seems like coming from like a 2 o'clock position. And the wall is very large, and there's also some light bouncing from the ground as well. So these two reflector combined together give me a lot of field light, so to balance the exposure difference between the light and the shadow. And then the results are very natural, and then you don't need to do much in the post editing. And then pretty much like when the straight out of the camera is 90% done. All you need to do is make some tiny adjustment in terms of color temperature, then go through your normal retouching process. In terms of wall, like you don't have to find like any wall, like a super bright, like a white wall or anything. And as long as it's not super dark or give you a weird color cast, it will work. And these walls, like if you're shooting the city setup, you can just find them anywhere. And they're a natural reflector. You can easily crop them into your frame without having to, it's not like softbox. You have to make sure it's not in the frame, or it's in the frame later on you have to Photoshop it. You don't have to deal with that. Like that's the thing about natural. Like, everything is natural. Everything is like working together perfectly. You don't have to do any manipulation in the post editing. Okay, so what if there's no reflector for us? If there's no wall, what we're gonna do? Can we still shooting with backlighting under the sun? The answer is yes. You can still do it. The real problem that we have when we're shooting backlighting is because the kicker light is too strong. There's not enough field light. So what we did before is like we use a reflector to add the field light, but we can also tune down the kicker lights to make the field light that naturally exists match better with the kicker light. Then how can we do it? Well, you can totally find a way to diffuse the sun. Like the most common way is use the tree. So basically what happened is like you let your subject stand in the way, in a spot that actually when the light and shadow transit, the smoother the transit will be better. Like the tree leaf usually give a smoother transition between under the sun to under the shade. If your subject happen to stand right at the border, usually the sun is diffused without get completely blocked away. So that way you naturally tune down the kicker light, and then that way the balance between the field light and the kicker light is more natural, and then it's just a way within the capability that your camera can capture. So that's 3 tips for shooting under direct sunlight. And then let's talk about the cloudy day or under the shade. So this is the lighting situation that everybody feel much more comfortable. Many photographers who start shooting natural light, they start from there, the natural light and then soft lighting. When you're shooting on a cloudy day, the whole sky is a large soft box, everything is nice and even. But that might be a potential problem with it. The problem is because the light is so nice and soft, so even, if you're not very careful with it, the photo might appear too flat. The reason is that it's like the photo lack of highlight and shadow, just a whole bunch of mid-tone. So in order to bring this contrast level back, we either need to add highlight, or we need to add a shadow, or maybe even better, we have both. So on a cloudy day, adding a highlight is impossible because you need some light source which is brighter than the sky. On the cloudy day, there's no way you can find such a lighting situation unless you use a flash. But on a sunny day, it's a different story. On a sunny day, if your subject is under the shade, for example, your model is under the shade, so she's the lighting on her is soft, but there's sunlight there as well. If she happened to stand right at where the light and the shadow meet, so she will be very close to the bounced light, which is like the sun will hit on the ground and bounce back to her face. And this bounce light actually is a lot stronger compared with the light within the shadow. So that's how you use that to create a contrast. And then that way to create a contrast will make it a lot more natural. And then everything's free. You don't have to deal with trigger, like ND filter or high speed sync or anything, that you bring the contrast back. And then let's talk about the shadow. The shadow can be easily achieved using something called a negative field. Negative field is basically you block the light from one direction or multiple direction and to make the light only coming from the other side of the camera. For example, like this shot, the model will stand on the balcony. There, like above her, there's another balcony, so the light is blocking from above, and then behind her, there's another wall, which is block the light coming from the other side. So the sun's only coming from camera left. So that way, we create this lighting situation. I call it diffuse and directional. This is a very good lighting diffuser. It's like a large salt box. Instead of a salt box everywhere, it's one large salt box only come from one area. So the benefit with this type of lighting is like you have this natural gradient from the mid-tone to shadow. So on the side, the closer to the wall is the shadow side. On the side facing to the sky is the mid-tone. That way you have a nice gradient. So you have the contrast, you have the shadow, and you have the mid-tone. So that's when you create the contrast. Then when you want to have both mid-tone and highlight and shadow, that's when you're shooting on a sunny day using the bounce light, and then get the model standing behind the wall. So that way the wall is a negative field, create the shadow, the bounce light from the sun help you to create a highlight, and then the natural light, the ambient light within the shadow area is the mid-tone. That's give you the three range of toning. That's when you have the best result using natural light by itself. The result is absolutely amazing. Okay, so we already have 4 tips talking about using natural light outdoor. Let's move indoor. When you move to indoor, the main light that we're gonna work with normally is the window light. Window light is just like the light that I talked about before. It's like a diffused and a directional. It's one large light source and it's only coming from one side. Within the room, the wall naturally creates this negative field. So it's easily helped to create this shadow and mid-tone. It's a very similar situation to shooting on a cloudy day. But the thing is, when you're shooting the window light, we need to be a little bit more creative because many people choosing an angle that the camera facing to the model, and then the windows coming from 90-degree angle. That's called a split lighting. The reason why I call it split lighting is like this is a term from a studio. Like when your subject's facing straight to the camera, the softbox coming only from one side, so only half of the face is under the light, the other half is under the shadows. It's almost like a face got split. It's called a split lighting. So people do it that way, split lighting. And it could be either your subject facing the camera or facing to the window. But the angle between the lighting and the camera is 90-degree. But many people do it this way, but actually you can be more creative. Like you can move the camera a little bit more to the shadow side so you can shoot short lighting. Short lighting is like when your subject's not facing directly to the camera, is facing at an angle, one side of the face appear narrow than the other side. So the shorter side, if the light coming from the shorter side, it's called the short lighting. If the light coming from the broader side, it's called the broad lighting. So that's the term. But anyway, you can do short lighting using window light. And that's like short lighting is always my most favorite lighting. It's because short lighting always gave me that highest level of contrast. The sense of contrast is very high. That's one thing. The second thing is like everything feels natural. It doesn't feel like too forced or over-engineered. It doesn't have that feeling. It feels very natural. So you can totally do short lighting using window light. Sometimes you might feel it depends on the room. If the room is too big, you probably doesn't have enough bounce light from the wall. If that's the case, you have to use a reflector. Doesn't have to be a large reflector, like a medium size is what I use. Like I think it's like around 3 feet in diameter, like those collapsible reflector. Okay, other than the short lighting, you can totally do backlighting. The backlighting is pretty much the same technique as short lighting. The only thing is you want to avoid your subject completely surrounded by this window, because usually when you shoot short lighting, the backlight may appear too strong. So that way, usually you are trying to avoid it. And then you just need to use reflect. Sometimes you have to use two. You just need a little bit more bounce light to fill out the shadow. And then the other thing is like when you shoot backlighting, be a little bit more creative. You don't always have to shoot eye level. You can move your camera up and pointing down. Just play with the angle. Be creative. Sometimes you can get quite a bit of a variety just out of a small room using window light. So now the tip number 6, still using window light, but this time you have multiple windows. So when you have multiple windows, now it doesn't mean you just have a larger saw box. Think it this way: when you have multiple windows, you have a multiple saw box. The benefit if you have more than one saw box is you can use different window to work as different light. This example is like a model standing between two windows, and this time I just use two windows as two kicker light coming from two different directions. I like to keep the contrast level high, so actually I didn't use a reflector or anything. This is pretty much kind of like a backlighting scene, but I didn't use any reflector. I just want to keep the way it is because I want a high level of contrast, and it works perfectly. The second one, then I get the model to turn the other way. So basically she's facing one window, and then there's the other window still behind her. So now the lighting setup changed. It's basically one window work as a kicker light, the other window working as the key light. It's a very similar setup like when I shooting in the studio. I use two umbrellas, one working as a kicker light, the other one working as a key light. Exactly the same idea, but you can do this using natural light, and it's completely free. Okay, the last tip. The window light is like all we assume the light coming from the window are soft light. What if it's a hard light? What if the sign is shining through the window and it's just a hard light hit the room? Normally what people are gonna do is they're gonna use a curtain or something to diffuse the sun so they can turn it back to the soft light. Nothing wrong with that, but you can totally work with a hard light as well. And my favorite angle for shooting with hard light is I do shooting with backlighting. Again, when you're shooting backlighting, reflector gonna become your best friend. Sometimes the things within the room can be a reflector. It could be the furniture, or maybe just a piece of blanket left on the ground, and then they can bounce light back to your subject. But if that's not strong enough, just grab a medium-sized reflector. So let's take a look at some sample photos. So this shot was like the sun's coming directly behind the subject, and then very strong hard light. There's some bounce light from the floor, but it's not enough. So what I did is I just used a medium-sized reflector, and then I used the white side instead of the silver. The silver gonna be way too strong. And then I used the white side of the reflector, and then I didn't bounce the light directly to her. Actually, it bounced light a little bit away from her. I usually use that way to control the amount of the bounce light, because you still want to make sure everything looks natural. It's almost kind of like when you're shooting with a softbox. Instead of the softbox pointing directly at your subject, you like turn it a little bit away. People call it feathering the light. So using reflector, it's kind of similar idea. That's how I use to control the amount of the reflected light back to the subject till I get the balance. The thing about shooting natural light is like what you see is what you get, right? So when you look at the viewfinder, then everything looks right, and then that's pretty much what you're gonna get when you open it up in the computer. It's not like a flash, you have to do the lighting test or everything. So everything is very visual. Because of the fact that you're using just a one reflector, your setup gonna be super simple, and then you can still get like amazing result. There we go, 7 tips to find the best lighting for a natural light. I hope this video will convince you to try natural light if you always shoot with a flash. Or if you're always working with natural light, I hope this video to help to get better result. As you can see, natural light is not always perfect, but that doesn't mean there's nothing you can do about it. The biggest thing about natural light is it looks very natural. This is something could be tricky to achieve when you're using flash. Actually, many photographers using flash, they have problem with that flashy look. How to get the natural look using flash is outside of this video. If you want to learn more, you should check out my other video in this channel. Or if you really want to dig deep in that topic, you should check out my online course, which I'll leave a link on the description below. Okay, thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.